I think so often I say we very loosely, or you'll have an accomplishment that you'll build up so much in your head, and you want other people to enjoy that glory with you, and just nobody's going to buy into something that you've personally created as much as you are. And I remember one specific instance. I was doing NaNoWriMo, or the National Novel Writing Month in November several years ago. And I did it. I wrote 50,000 words in a month, and I felt really good about it. And so I got all my friends to go out to the bar and, celebrate it with me. And I just remember standing around feeling feels great. It's a great accomplishment, but nobody here really, they're happy for me, but they don't care as much as I do. And
Yeah.
it's you set unrealistic expectations for yourself and for others. And when you do that and you come to the realization that those expectations can't equate to real life, you really can let yourself down. And I've tried to be very careful about that since then.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself too. Like I say, I think that I gravitated towards a lot of my work as sort of a coping mechanism, and that's why I became so obsessive about a lot of it, and that's how I got good at some things. And I think in the process, I expected to make certain accomplishments, but many times I've realized that this accomplishment or thing that I wanted meant so much to me. I built it up so much, and nobody else cares. And so that was difficult to come to realization of, and to internalize. And I think maybe I still have some things like that, but I think now it's like less and less of a big deal. Almost anything. And as an author, there's these things that I used to want. Like I wanted to, I have one traditionally published book, but I wanted to traditionally publish more books. And now I'm self-publishing. And to some people, that's just shameful or something. But now I don't want the traditional publishing thing. I wanted to be a New York Times bestselling author, and I don't aspire to that anymore. And I guess it's changing what I want, why I want it. What does it do for my internal state? And I think that it's nice to not want those things so much. It's sort of like when Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize, right? He didn't even show up didn't even claim. I don't know how it went, but I think he didn't even accept the thing. It just wasn't what he was going for.
Yeah. I so appreciate that. I really do. And as we talk, I'm pulling random bits of your newsletters into my head that I've read over the years. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I read one time where you talked about the accomplishment, and I do call it an accomplishment, of your podcast being one of Apple's picks. And I don't know what verbiage they use on that, but you made it to the front page, and I think, if I recall correctly, it wasn't as big of a deal, at least in direct terms to your download numbers, as you would have hoped or expected. And so we build these things up in our heads to have such high expectations, but when in reality, they can be disappointing if we don't have that realistic mindset.
Yeah, that was when Apple featured my podcast, like photo and everything, and it brought in some downloads. And that was early on in my podcasting career, and I, maybe had different goals then than I do now. And I guess I wanted it to be big. I wanted it to, it helped me feel important, perhaps, and maybe it wasn't that important, but it also reminds me of when you're doing sort of a media type thing where you want podcast listeners, you want people to buy your book, so you can make more podcast episodes, so you can write more books. I think that's the best reason to do those things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while for people to notice you. It reminds me of a story with Steve Martin in his book Born Standing Up, where he talks about how getting on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was like the biggest thing
Right.
that you could accomplish as a stand-up comedian. And he did it. It was such a big deal. And he expected his whole life to change, and it didn't.
Right.
And then he was like on again. And then he was on again. And then like he says, there's a quote, something like maybe around the 11th time somebody says, "Hey, weren't you at like my cousin's party thing?" And then when finally, after I can't remember how many times, he was like recognized in public, somebody was like, "Hey, weren't you the guy on the Tonight Show the other night?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I didn't care for it."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I guess you kind of open yourself up at that point in time. There are two sides to that coin. I mean, you get that recognition, but you're also going to get people who are going to be critical of your work, which I think is, I think in regard to content creation, I think that's something that a lot of people are fearful of, and it probably holds people back from pressing publish from time to time. I know that I've got anxieties around getting a 1-star review on Apple Podcasts. What's that going to do to me? Obviously, in the long run, probably not going to do a
I've
whole
got
lot.
those.
And what did it feel like the first time you got one of those?
Well, my first 1-star review was on my first book, Designed for Hackers.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was it ruined my life. No, it ruined my life for like maybe a week. And I'm like, wow, what this review? What are we gonna do about this? And now I can look back on it and be like, oh, yeah, that person, I can see that person's perspective.
Right.
And I still get. I'm to the point now where it doesn't really affect me a great deal. And I think a lot of it has it's just been a change in my I guess source of like what I do to feel important,
Yeah.
or who I'm important to, and what I'm trying to accomplish with the work. What I aspire to is to have the same attitude that Jerry Seinfeld has, which he was on Tim Ferriss's podcast recently and said, the every opinion the audience gives you is 100% correct.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the exact words of that. Yeah, if somebody hates your work and they have something to say about it, then they're right.
Yeah.
They're right from their perspective. So much to the point that I think my second book, The Heart to Start, in the United States on Apple, or sorry, on Amazon, I've got a ton of reviews, and they're overwhelmingly extremely positive reviews. And I feel like it's a liability in a way. Now I've got some bad reviews. I especially like the UK.
Sure.
They hate that book in the UK for some reason. And actually, before publishing this book, Mind Management, Not Time Management, that was a thing that I made a conscious decision to do. And I've heard Seth Godin talk about this, that you don't want all 5-star reviews. Like you want people to if you get all 5-star reviews, then you didn't really you're not really standing for a thing.
Right.
Yeah, you want it to be some people to not like it. And so going into this latest book, Mind Management, Not Time Management, I made a conscious effort to write a book that some people are going to hate. And not because I'm not, that can be dangerous, that, you can be contrarian for being contrarian's sake. And I think that works. It's not the game that I want to play.
Right.
But there's people who do that and, reach some of the highest offices available in the world doing that. Now,
Yeah.
I wanted to write something that some people were going to hate, because this is the book that I feel, the book that I want to read, the book that I want to write. And so I took certain risks in sort of the narrative format of the book and the way that I conveyed information, and maybe in some of the opinions that I that I expressed in the book to try to, and I could hear the 1-star reviewers. I knew what they were going to say. And sure enough, like the, couple 1-star reviews I have so far say pretty much the things that I expected them to say.
Right.
And that's kind of a beauty actually of taking a risk.
Yeah.
That way is when you know what the criticism is going to be, but you recognize that, well, it's not for you. Then if that's what you think, then it's not for you. I intentionally made these trade-offs and these compromises to make something for people who aren't you.
The Mosaic Life podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the full show notes at themosaiclifepodcast.com and sign up for the Circle newsletter for exclusive access to podcast content.